Have you ever used the phrase "my waifu"? Or watched memes about Osaka's lost shoe? Seen baffling out-of-context scenes of removable pigtails or bite-happy cats? Since it aired in the spring of 2002, Azumanga Daioh has been, and arguably still is, a pillar of anime fan culture. And it's not just for the memes. The series started the blend of slice-of-life school comedy with the moe iyashikei that genre is now synonymous with. It and the yonkoma it's based on inspired a ton of later shows, some of which became classics themselves. But as it so often is with shows that start trends, when you go back to it later, Azumanga still has a rough, less engineered charm that makes it feel different from what came after. Originally planned as an ONA, the idea of an anime adaptation was so successful that Azumanga Daioh was instead made for TV. Since it was adapting a yonkoma series, so basically comic strips, they were adapted into 5-minute skits that would air every weekday between shows. Then, on the weekends, those 5 skits would be re-aired together in a compilation with an OP and ED in its own time slot. This is the format in which it appeared in all later releases. Azumanga Daioh follows a group of girls through their entire high school life, along with their loud, irresponsible teacher, Tanizaki Yukari, who keeps them conveniently in her class the whole time because she's too lazy to keep learning new student names. It's also a great example of a character-driven show. The story and jokes all flow from the characters' personalities and circumstances, like how Chiyo is a child prodigy 5 grades above her age level, and Sakaki should be the dictionary illustration for Gap Moe. We also see regular dream sequences, which is where you get stuff like this. Even after all these years, Azumanga Daioh is still charming, and most of the jokes are still funny. The characters are its high points. They all stand out as individuals, even when some aspects of their characters overlap. For instance, Kagura is a strong athlete like Sakaki, and book-dumb and ill-tempered like Tomo, but her up-and-down rivalries with both of them keep her from being redundant. Most of them are well-rounded beyond their initial gimmicks and don't fall into one stereotype all the time. They feel like people you know rather than tick boxes like, here's this popular character type. And that alone may be worth the admission, or in this case the High Dive subscription. But both of those points, how the jokes and the cast hold up, each have one major exception in how the anime reflects the manga's initial growing pains. It starts with Kaorin in the main cast and Kagura as a bit character, but Kaorin is slowly phased out because, unlike the others who have multifaceted personalities, being a useless lesbian is her one and only joke, which, as relatable as it is, gets kind of boring eventually. And then there's Mr. Kimura. His main gimmick is that he's a perverted teacher who lusts after not only his coworkers but also the female students, and he gets more and more out there when the school won't fire him for creeping. Okay, in a world where some degenerate greenlit Nobunaga teacher's young bride, it's at least good to see Mr. Kimura unanimously treated as disgusting by the main cast and the narrative, but his segments have not aged well. And unlike Kaorin, he's in the show for the long haul. Aside from those two though, the series is still funny and charming, and while there is mild fan service, it's minor enough that I forgot it was there. As was the norm in the 2000s, Azumanga Daioh was licensed a few years after it came out by ADV and distributed first in single volumes, then in a box set. It was also shown on Anime Network, and the beginning of the series was even offered on the Nokia Ovi service. Remember that? After the fall of ADV, Azumanga Daioh ended up licensed by Aesir Holdings, one of its splinter companies and the one that held its previous remaining assets. But Sentai Filmworks, its main splinter company and the one that handled the anime it actually put a budget behind selling, later acquired the license and it's now up for streaming on High Dive, both sub and dub. Both are pretty good, but the dub is a nostalgic look into the state of anime dubs at the time and the actors who were active at ADV in the mid-2000s. I mean, Jessica Boone used to be all over the place, and then a couple years ago she quit anime to join a Shakespeare company. You're now imagining Chiyo-chan playing Lady Macbeth. While a little of it hasn't aged as well as it could have, most of Azumanga Daioh surprisingly holds up. The comedy is still good, the characters are still engaging, and you'll absolutely have your favorites and the ones you relate to solidly picked out. This was one of my most requested old school anime retrospectives, so let me know in the comments what older series you want me to cover next. Remember, the rule for an old school anime here is that if it were a person, it would be old enough to drive. This is Secret Identity Studio, and as we close out the decade, thank you all very much for everything. You've helped this channel grow a lot in a short amount of time, and I'm legit very grateful. See you all next year.